Hello everyone, thank you for joining us. I'm Katlego, welcoming you to Citizen Concerned, where we remind you to beware of the Comrades. So check this guy out.
We do not want to form any part of a government with representatives of the white colonial and apartheid system. And we think now that through fair observation and what got to happen with the Democratic Alliance and all these minority white parties, they represent that agenda.
Did you hear that? The same old racist mumbo-jumbo. Rubbish from the EFF. Childish arguments that add no value to the lives of South African people. The only reason he does not want to work with the DA is because they are white people within the DA. Imagine the mindset you have to be racist like that. Does the DA identify as a white party or a representative of colonialism? No. Are they even foreigners? No. The logic of a racist like this one is to try to make black people believe that white people are not South Africans. And you as black South Africans should put on your critical thinking hat every time you hear such people talk, instead of just accepting their lies and repeating them wherever you find yourself.
That is why the beneficiaries of the white capitalist and apartheid colonial establishment exclusively funded the Democratic Alliance and all these puppet parties. A lot of resources, hundreds of millions, were invested not just to fight the ruling party, the ANC, to fight against the economic freedom fighters.
I will keep on saying this, guys. The EFF was funded by a white man. The EFF leaders hang out with white friends. They send their children to white schools, but they are here to tell you that they stand against white people because white people are what? Representatives of colonialism. Do you know what amazes me? It is the fact that people like this racist get a lot of media coverage, and people like the MK racists get media coverage too. The people that are funded by the pro-free markets and pro-unity are considered to be puppets by these fake freedom fighters. I mean, who in their right mind would fund the EFF if they are pro-freedom and pro-jobs and pro-business? Only corrupt people who get their money in funny ways would fund the EFF. And by funding the EFF, it becomes clear that there is something sinister about those funders. When the parties like BOSA and Action SA are being funded by businesses or by white people, they are labeled as puppets. When the EFF is funded by white people, it is a free-thinking party. Imagine the hypocrisy. That is some dumb thinking. It is amazing to me that there are people who actually said, I am going to vote for the EFF. But if we work hard and continue to share the truth with fellow citizens, I'm sure the EFF supporters will see things as they really are, and EFF will shrink even further in the next elections. I'm dedicating this video to waking fellow citizens up from the poisonous lies of this racist man called Floyd Shivambu and his party. White people that have South African IDs are not colonialists. They are South African citizens. Indian people that have IDs are not slaves from India. They are South Africans. Black, white, colored and Indian South Africans are all South Africans. Don't let the racists tell you otherwise. The racist EFF would rather have white people hated by the rest of the population as long as they benefit. Divide and conquer. We will not fall for it here in South Africa. It worked in Zimbabwe, but it is not going to work here. I'm glad that people like the Oppenheimers and Ruperts, as well as other white, black, colored and Indian people and businesses, spend their money to try to save South Africa, saving it from these communists. I'm glad that we have parties like BOSA, IFP, Action SA and DA fighting against the rise of these communists and racist agendas that have already destroyed the rest of Africa.
And we are not desperate for positions in government. We're not going to do everything in our power so that we're appointed into cabinet or we become speakers of parliament and all of those things. We're not going to sit alongside the land thieves. We're not going to sit alongside the people who got to benefit unlawfully for a very long time from colonialism and apartheid. We're not going to sit alongside them and constitute the government of South Africa.
This man has a poisonous mouth. Floyd Shivambu, apartheid has been dead for more than 30 years now. Colonization ended more than 100 years ago. These white people you hate are South Africans too. They also lose out when the economy does bad. If the economy fails, they will fail too. The only people who never suffer when the economy fails, or whether the economy does well or not, are a bunch of useless, divisive people like yourself. Politicians that live on the division. People that lack unity, people that lack patriotism and love for their fellow citizens like yourself. People like you, the politicians, are the only ones who benefit. Parliament will still need those seats occupied, which means your kind will have jobs whether South Africa gets 10 million new jobs or not. Whether South Africa closes down 1 million companies, you and your kind will still have a job. The rest of us as South Africans, black, white, colored and Indian, even green, are the ones that suffer the consequences. We are the ones that lose our jobs. We are the ones who feed people like yourself, Floyd. The divisive narrative is what makes you and also keeps you and your political party relevant. Racism is all you have to offer. Without division and racism, what do you stand for? What will you talk about in Parliament? How will you justify getting paid those millions in salaries? People like the leaders of the EFF and the MK are the lowest scum on earth. They drive evil narratives while convincing black South Africans that they care about them and their economic success. When will we start building our country for that economic success when we have lunatics always saying so and so does not belong here? When will we start focusing on competence when the media focuses on these people and yet never really questions anything they say? Imagine this guy. We are not going to sit along with parties that have white people because white people once benefited from colonialism. If we all go far enough, we will always find a wrong that was committed by everyone's ancestors. Julius Malema went to Ghana and sat alongside them, but Ghana was involved in the transatlantic slave trade, through which an estimated 12 million Africans were forcefully relocated to the Americas. You're not going to sit along with parties that have white people because white people once benefited from colonialism, yet you're able to travel all the way to Ghana to sit alongside Ghanaians who benefited from slavery. Does anyone else sense the hypocrisy here? And by the way, I have no animosity against anyone from Ghana because I understand that they were not involved in slavery. Their ancestors were, and it is futile and unfair to be angry with them for what their ancestors did. Why should I be angry at the great-grandchildren of a colonizer who came here and stole from an ancestor of mine who I never knew, when I should worry about Zuma and the Guptas who stole from me 10 years ago? Why should I concern myself with wrongdoings of an ancestor who came to colonize Africa 400 years ago? Yes, our lives were disrupted, but all that is over now. We are a new era. We have new criminals now. Some of these criminals are in the MK party. Some are tax evaders and tenderpreneurs in the EFF allegedly. Why should I care about colonial era problems when thieves are walking among us right now? Thieves are in Parliament right now, laundering money and living like kings right now. They create no value. They get rich off of the tax that I pay. Why should I care about oppression that happened 400 years ago when I wasn't there, instead of caring about the oppression I am currently being subjected to by those who are trying to redirect my attention to imaginary enemies? We are all descendants of thieves and murderers if we go back into history far enough. We cannot punish you for the sins of your father, but if you support the sins of your father and you helped your father to steal from us, then we have a problem.
If the ANC wants to choose that route, they can go ahead and do what they did in 1994. And we know what are the consequences of what happened in 1994. Black people and Africans in particular remain on the margins of economic participation in South Africa. Black people more or less stay in the same spaces that they lived under when apartheid had segregated black people to inferior spaces. It's still a lived reality. Racism is still a reality. Poverty of our people is still a reality because of this government of national unity.
This racist says racism is still alive, but the only racist I clearly see in this modern South Africa is him. Floyd Shivambu is a racist who likes to lie. The government of national unity that started from 1994 has no bearing on the failures of the ANC. The National Party actually resigned from that government because the ANC was a majority and the ANC was doing what it wanted anyway. How long was that government of national unity that Floyd Shivambu wants to blame everything on? The government of national unity was there for the first term and they even resigned from that role by 1996. So it makes no sense to want to blame the failures of the ANC on anyone but the ANC. They've held power from 1994 until now. If you want to be generous, we can say from 1996 until now. We all can read, Mr. Racist Liar. South Africans are suffering because of dumb policies and lack of competence from people like yourself. You're just a radical version of the ANC, but you remain an ANC baby.
It must be an agenda to provide free education. Must be an agenda to protect workers' rights and interests, to enforce minimum wages in all the sectors where they are applicable.
South Africa already provides free education. The government could do more, especially for ECD level education, but the bottom line is, don't lie. There is free education here. Let's not act like there's no free education in South Africa. Free education is not very feasible because when people do not feel the pinch of making babies without self-control, then what happens is that our taxes will end up focusing on raising other people's babies and not building quality schools, fixing our roads and rails, or paying the police to lower crimes. People need to pay for their education a bit per child. We can't have people giving birth to 10 kids and walking away never knowing what it is like to pay school fees. And as for minimum wage, take a look at this.
Now to the fast food sticker shock in California after the minimum wage for workers out west was raised.
Yeah, I am hearing from customers every day who say they are already feeling that sticker shock. Restaurants have been warning about this since September when California voted to increase large fast food chains' minimum wage by 25% from $16 to $20 an hour. In that time, restaurants in the state have increased prices by 10% faster than all other states, according to Data Essential. The wage increase is meant to give more financial security to the more than 500,000 people who work in fast food restaurants in California. Since it took effect, job losses, reduced working hours, restaurant closures, and higher prices for California's inflation-weary customers have been ongoing, the group said.
If the federal government raises the minimum wage from $7.25 to $10.10 an hour, there will be fewer poor people, right? Well, the truth is, there would be fewer jobs. Many minimum wage jobs are the first jobs people ever get, like at a restaurant or a grocery store. Making their employer pay them more means their employer cannot afford as many workers unless they drastically raise their prices, and probably lose a lot of customers. Instead, many employees could get replaced by robots or computers, like those self-checkout lines at the grocery store. Even the government's own Congressional Budget Office says such a raise would eventually leave as many as 500,000 people unemployed.
California fast food chains are feeling the pains of Governor Gavin Newsom's minimum wage hike. One California Mexican chain, Rubio's Coastal Grill, filed for bankruptcy this week after announcing they're closing 48 California restaurants because of, quote, the rising cost of doing business. As a reminder, 2 months ago, California implemented a $20 per hour minimum wage for fast food employees, up from $16 an hour.
And this major boost to fast food workers' minimum wage here in California is set to take effect in April. But already some fast food chains like Pizza Hut are responding by cutting jobs.
Do you see this? But the dumb policies of backward communists like the EFF and the trade unions of South Africa still fail to take these facts into consideration. And then they use the media to spread the lies to the masses. And unfortunately, fellow South African, we have really done ourselves a disservice in simply believing and sharing what these people have been telling us without taking time to interrogate it or do a bit of research.
There is empirical evidence, and also if one considers, rational, objective, unemotional discourse, the route to go is to do away with the national minimum wage, especially if one considers the fact that we are a developing country's economy. By definition, is labor intensive. And so there's a vast pool of labor, people unemployed out there. And so we need policies that are going to make it easy for people to come into the labor market. Now, the national minimum wage or sectoral minimum wage constitutes a barrier to entry for those people who are outside, but it's good for those people who are already in the system, who are employed, especially those who are part of organized labor.
If you raise the minimum wage, businesses will either fire workers in order to cut costs, or they will raise the costs of goods and services, thereby affecting the people even more. The minimum wage will buy even less, or the employer may even retrench and hire machines because machines don't require wages. They require maintenance, they don't complain, and they work tirelessly. Minimum wage is also why you will see illegal foreigners being employed. Learn from history, dear communists. Stop lying to people here. And dear people, also do your homework and don't just take the words of the communists as the gospel. While seeming yet silly ideas like minimum wage are the reason why companies like Shein and now Temu are ruining our local producers.
Lawmakers in the U.S. are pushing the SEC to audit Shein over allegations it uses forced labor. Canada's North American trade agreements prohibit the import of anything made with forced labor. Sustainable fashion advocates say Shein's supply chain is enormous and complicated. Its major fast fashion rivals offer new lines bi-weekly or monthly, but Shein makes thousands of new products available daily at a fraction of the cost.
You'll get that minimum wage, but when you come tomorrow, the job is gone because you're too expensive, you're too slow, and Temu is cheaper and delivers faster. That's it.
And when we did the debate in Fort Hare University organized by the university, we did say on coalitions that whatever must be a coalition government in South Africa must exclude all Oppenheimer puppets. That is what we said publicly. That is our position, that we do not want to have a government that is composited of Oppenheimer puppets and stooges, because the agenda has been revealed as to what they seek to achieve. They want to protect the status quo of colonialism, of apartheid, of economic extrusion of our people. That is what they seek to achieve.
More nonsense. Parties like the DA, BOSA, and Action SA are supposed to save us from the ANC, MK, and EFF. There's nothing special here. If those parties are the puppets of whoever funds them, then the EFF, ANC, and MK are puppets of whoever funded them as well. You were funded just like everyone else. So let's stop wasting time on that funding theory and let's talk about what matters, your conduct and your policies.
If a government of national unity means that we must have Steenhuisen and Helen Zille who represent a counter-revolutionary agenda as government, we're not going to form part of that nonsense, because we've got now proper historical trace, an account of just how disastrous was such an arrangement, where black leaders who are supposed to autonomously take leadership must tiptoe around white people in cabinet. We are not going to make the same mistakes that were made by the 1994 group of Nelson Mandela and them, who thought that even when they had the majority that they had to include white people into government. We are not part of that nonsense.
Again, rubbish. The ANC had a majority. It did what it wanted during that period. The Nationalist Party that formed that government saw no value in that union and resigned from it. The fact remains, Floyd Shivambu is simply racist, or he's simply a liar, or both. We appoint people based on performance, do we not? Well, the EFF clearly do not. These people are in the limelight, but they don't deserve any attention from our people. But since they have made it into the limelight, we will make sure to expose their hypocrisy and racism so that everyone can see.
We are happy that majority of potentially progressive black parties can constitute more than 2/3 of parliament, so that when we talk about the land question, we can still be able to amend Section 25 of South Africa's Constitution to permit for expropriation of land without compensation, but also for state custodianship of all of South Africa's land, in the same way the state is a custodian of all mineral resources and water resources.
I hope that never happens. Thankfully, Zuma hates Cyril Ramaphosa and the EFF is too small to work with the MK on its own, so we're safe. But in actual fact, like I said in my previous video, we are sitting on the edge of a knife here. The MK party, EFF and ANC are all one party, and if you ask me, the ANC is still in charge. The main ANC is weaker and smaller, which makes a potential combo of these three parties an event majority of our people should fear, but it seems most of us don't know that we should fear it. The two smaller parties can strong-arm the ANC into policies and actions detrimental to the well-being of this nation, but majority of South Africa voted for them, so what can we say except we hope they never unite. For now, the main agenda for me is to wake up our brothers and sisters. I'm definitely going to need your help with that, so please subscribe, share this video far and wide, join my channel membership or donate whatever you feel like. I really appreciate the help and the time you guys have spent on this channel. I'm Katlego, this is Citizen Concerned, and until next time, beware of the comrades.